Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88, 85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him, Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's good? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh edition of GTF. Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. I just want to get this quick thing out of the way. Please do all the things that all the analytics say you should do. There he is. Bennett is in the house. And please press like and give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with fellow Bears fans. Do all of that stuff. It would really help us out. Meanwhile, let's say hello to the dog's owner, Greg Gabriel. How are you, my friend?
I'm going to bring him in here because somebody's probably trying to walk by the house.
Okay.
For 30 seconds.
You got it. That is, of course, Greg Gabriel, former scouting director of the Chicago Bears. His dog is named Bennett, and Bennett is a little bit more ornery perhaps than other times because somebody in the home is away for a few days, and so it's just Greg and Bennett now. Let's ask him how they're getting along. I love that hat. Greg, how are you and Bennett getting along?
I'm sorry, what?
How are you and Bennett getting along?
Ben and I are getting along. He misses his mama, though. Big time.
She's been away for a little while, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The work assignment.
Yeah, well, you gotta follow the money, as they say.
Why don't you come here, bring the dog, and stay about a week? The only thing is I got to rent a car to do that and then rent a car for a week, so it gets expensive.
Yeah, it will indeed. All right, we got all the hospitality things out of the way, the press like and all that stuff. And by the way, if you're on Facebook, register at StreamYard.com/Facebook. It's free to register to the StreamYard account. But what it will do is that we can see your comments. So if you got a question or comment for Greg, we can see it on our feed here. So really would appreciate if you did that because we'd love to hear from you. And one of the cool things about this show today, Greg, is all of the comments are, hi, Greg, hi, Aldo, but they're also hi, Triple R, hi, Evie, hi, Evie, hi, Skeletor. Everybody, it's like coming into a bar and everybody's saying, hey, Norm, it's really, really a nice feeling.
Poor Norm.
Yeah. George Wendt just left us a week ago, I think it was.
Yeah. I got to say something. Until after he died, I mean, I was always a big fan. Loved him on Cheers. Loved him on SNL when he was doing the Bear skit. I did not know he was from Chicago.
Yeah, long-time Chicagoan, absolutely.
Southsider, and he went to Notre Dame.
That I did not know.
He got kicked out, but he went to Notre Dame. And I read about it, and he was living off campus in an apartment. It was a bad winter, and he couldn't get to like classes and stuff, and I guess he didn't have a car, and he flunked out because of that.
Yeah.
So he got his degree somewhere else. But what I found out again last week, huge Notre Dame fan.
That is wild.
Still, even though they threw him out, but that goes along with being a Southside Catholic and the Bears thing. That's how that happened, because they all talk like a bunch of Southsiders.
Indeed. Rest in peace, George Wendt. And today is Memorial Day, so happy Memorial. Well, we shouldn't be saying happy Memorial Day. We should just salute our heroes. And I just wanted to ask you, Greg, and start this way: is what does Memorial Day mean to you personally?
Gratitude towards the people in the service, and I wasn't in. My father was. My uncles were. My uncle was paralyzed on the right side of his body because my mind blew up underneath him.
Oh no!
He had served. He was in the Army in World War II, got out, and then joined gung ho guy, joined the Marines for Korea, and that's where he got hurt. But after that, it didn't let it hurt him in any way. He was paralyzed on the right side, but he still made 10 kids and was a very successful attorney.
Wow, that's fantastic. And you've shared the story before about your dad, but your dad, if you don't mind sharing again, he had a lot of successful, heroic runs. He was a pilot, wasn't he?
He was a C-47 pilot, which was a transport plane, paratroop plane. So he flew at D-Day and a bunch of other big world post D-Day situations where they dropped troops. But one of the toughest things he did, and he didn't talk much about the war, but he talked about this because he said it was just so hard for him, was at the end of the war, and they were freeing the concentration camps. One of the jobs he had to do, they flew refugees, for lack of a better word, these concentration camps. And he said just the sight of what these poor people looked like and what they had been through was just heartbreaking to him. And that's one of the very few things he shared about the war, was that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, those heroes who fought for our freedom and fought for our way of living and so forth, and sacrificed the ultimate, are just, they should be in our thoughts every day, not just on Memorial Day. Whether you pray or not, whatever you do when you're contemplating life in general, save a thought of gratitude for those people who have just made all of this possible for us here in America.
Although we never went through it, but obviously my father did, and to go through a war situation, the courage. I know in my father's situation, flying in paratroops, like at D-Day, and I did not know this until my dad died in 1986. So this is well after he was gone, and actually it started around when Band of Brothers came about, because that was really the same group of people he flew in, and you saw that the planes. I always assumed, because I was idiot, they were way up and then they dropped the guys out. Wrong. They would fly in and they would drop below 1,000 feet.
Wow.
When they were getting ready to drop the troops, and sometimes there was lows like 800 feet, 700 feet. And the reason being is you wanted those guys on the ground as quick as could be, because then they were sitting ducks just coming down. So they're that low. And C-47s, which was the military version of the DC-3, had no armament on it.
Okay.
Wow, so they were just, they had no way to fight back. No
that
guns, nothing. And it was, to fly in those formations, a plane next to you gets blown out of the sky, the plane in front of you gets blown out of the sky with flak, and you just got to keep the steady formation and make sure you hit the drop zone. And they missed a bunch of drop zones on D-Day, but just to do that, the courage that took is just absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I spent some time on Turner Classic Movies watching some war movies this weekend, and was just really taken by, and that's Hollywood, but taken by the amount of courage it took so many people to serve in those wars. Chris says that his grandfather was a paratrooper, fought through the whole of World War II, was a part of D-Day.
Oh, he was over in Europe, obviously.
Yes.
Exactly. I just saw a thing last week that they said the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan was so close to being real.
Yeah.
That there's war veterans that saw it that got all shook up because it just brought back bad memories.
Yeah, I've only seen that movie once. It was in the movie theater, and I thought it was the greatest, most emotional film I've ever seen in my life. And I don't want to see it again because I don't want to lose that feeling that I got the first time. That I don't want to be disappointed the second time or bored by it.
No, I get it.
But it's just a super intense movie, and boy, I could still hear those bullets, going from one side of the theater to the other side of the theater, and feeling that they were going right through me. Amazing stuff. All right, well, let's talk a little football now, Greg. Let's start with the topic of Caleb Williams. I know we talked about it last week, but the story is not going away, and it probably won't go away until Caleb finally meets with the media, and hopefully that's next Wednesday when they're back for OTAs, and addresses questions that will be posed by the media. But what are your thoughts overall as this kind of controversy, for lack of a better word, continues to move along?
You want my honest opinion?
Yes, please.
He shouldn't address it. Tell the media to stick it. It's an old story. It's like I said, we talked about it 15 months ago. This went on, what was going on in what Seth Wickersham mentioned in his book, started when he finished his season at USC, decided to go in the draft. The Bears had earned, for lack of a better term, the right to the first pick and probably take Caleb. And so his group, his dad and advisors, looked into a way of circumventing the draft. As you know, when you do you're entering any type of situation, you want to look at all sides and see, do you have any options? And he wanted to find that out. The way this has been presented, though, was that he never wanted to come here, when the fact is that long before the draft, he had already made up his mind, I'm going there, and that's where I want to be. And so to me, it's just like something's getting blown out of proportion that shouldn't be, because it's being, a story from over a year ago is being brought back to life. And the media, being the media in this town, is just trying to find a way to tear him down. And no matter what he says, you know as well as I do, no matter if he got up there and addressed it, no matter what he says, it's the wrong answer. So in my opinion, they wouldn't let him talk next week. And if I'm him, if they want to ask about, I go, next question. That was a year ago. It was addressed a year ago. People knew about it. Forget about it. If you don't like it, tough shit.
I do think, Greg, that it is important for him to address it, at least make a statement. And that is, to present the business case. I'm like all of you. I am looking for the best possible situation to do my job, whether it's a writer, a reporter, a plumber, what have you. And that's what me and my dad were doing, on my behalf. I earned the right by my play to have a say, in my opinion, to have a say in where I go. We looked into it, and unfortunately, use the word unfortunately, and it didn't happen. And for those of you saying that I would prefer to play at Minnesota, I said that once, but today I am saying I want to beat the shit out of the Vikings, and I want to beat the shit out of the Packers and the Lions. I'm here in Chicago, and I love this town and I love this team. He needs to say something like that, I think, to shut all the naysayers out, like TB17, who is in the chat talking shit about Caleb.
I don't disagree with what you say, but part of me says that by giving in, so to speak, and addressing it, he's giving in to the media.
Yeah.
And why do you give in to the media? Who are they? I mean, yeah, I saw people that, bloggers and stuff putting all this stuff and he's got to do it. And otherwise it's going to follow him, all year. And whenever he has a bad game, people are going to say this and, screw him. The important thing is win games. And Ben Johnson said it right. All I know since I've been with him in January has been great. That's my experience. End of discussion.
I thought Coach Johnson did a nice job, and he volunteered it. In his first comment, he talked about what the OTAs are doing and so forth. And then he says, also, I heard about the Caleb.
Yeah, I heard my quarterbacks in the media.
Yeah, there you go. I thought that was a perfect way to handle it, and I just hope that, for the idiot Chicago Bears fans who are making a big deal of it, because that's a part of the story too, right? It's not just the media feeding.
You know what? I don't know if I agree with you because I see stuff and I see that a lot of fans are saying they're the same way I am. Screw the media.
Yeah.
They're the ones trying to make a big deal about it when there's nothing to be made. Like I say, it's an old story. You and I talked about it. We could dig up the shows where we talked about it and mentioned exactly what was going on. So if we knew about it back then, if they're too freaking stupid that they don't know and they don't remember, that's their problem.
Right. Well, see, and there's misinformation like TB17 says, Williams, if Williams didn't decide to do the book interview, he didn't do the book interview. The interview was with his dad. Caleb did not talk to Seth Wickersham as far as that excerpt that was released. There was not a one-on-one interview with Seth Wickersham and Caleb Williams. Based on what I gathered, any Caleb Williams quotes were public quotes that were already. The exclusive interview that Wickersham has is with Caleb's father. So that
let's just say he did. Okay. So what?
Yeah.
He's talking about history. History that we already knew about, that had already been discussed. So does it become something new that you didn't know? No, they just don't remember that it already happened when it was discussed more than a year ago. In fact, it's like 15, 16 months ago.
All right. And TB is saying that he heard an interview with Wickersham and that he did say that he talked to Caleb. So if that's the case, I apologize for the misinformation I just let out. And you're right. George, Jesus. Why am I calling you George? Greg. You're right. I mean, that is a justifiable way to handle it. I'm not answering any questions about it. And when the book is released in September, more stuff is going to come out, or the same topic is going to be raised. And so maybe he addresses it then. Maybe he might have to. I don't know. I think it's just best to nip it in the bud now and say, listen, I don't want to talk about this bullshit.
Blah, you know what? Here's where I disagree. And I may be totally wrong. If he gives in and he addresses it, every time he has a lousy game, they're going to bring it up.
Yeah.
That's what they do here. They live off of negativity. And you got to start dealing with the positives and forget about the negatives.
Yeah, I understand that. I sometimes go to bat for the media because I worked in the news gathering business for several years, and I understand what their goals are. They're there to provide information, but at times also to try to get a headline and get people to watch, whether it's a TV news broadcast or read a paper or what have you.
It's clickbait, although, I mean, it's like, oh, if he addresses it, then we're going to write about it. And if they write about it, people are going to read it, or people are going to listen to the Score or ESPN 1000 to hear what the different jockeys got to say about it. So it's all about helping them, but they're not helping him. They're doing, hey, no, what it is. It's basically the same BS they did to Justin Fields. Let's find some stuff to bitch about. Let's pick them apart. I hear you. And they want to know why quarterbacks don't succeed in this town. Freaking media goes out of the way to kill them.
I don't think that's true. I just don't think that's true.
They find ways to kill people in this town.
You think that Justin Fields did not succeed in Chicago because of the media? Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler didn't succeed because of Jay Cutler.
Okay. So what about Justin Fields? Justin Fields did not succeed because of the Chicago Bears and himself.
I don't totally agree with that, because you always had people tearing him down. It was always the topic, and that's why I stopped listening to the radio, because I don't want to hear it anymore. So I just don't turn it on.
And I don't blame anyone, but news is about reporting about negative stuff, and so if a quarterback like Justin Fields, who was having trouble finding the open man in the football field, having trouble with his accuracy. Yes, he did some phenomenal things. And I wanted Caleb to remain as Justin to remain as a Chicago Bear. So don't take this out of place. But the fact is that he himself had issues as a quarterback and demonstrated those issues at Pittsburgh.
Okay. I don't know. We weren't in Pittsburgh to know what happened in Pittsburgh. I think they were favoring Russell Wilson right from the start on that, because when Russell Wilson first got to play, his very first half, he was pathetic. And it was like, when are they going to pull him and put the other guy back in?
Very true. Very true.
Okay, so,
yes.
But with Justin. A lot of it, and it's the same thing that went through Caleb last year. A lot of it was coaching or lack thereof.
Yeah,
and
I agree with that.
More and more has been coming out recently that they're starting to figure out a lot of quarterbacks don't succeed because they're not taught, they're not brought up rightly. They got horrible coaching in the situation that they're in.
And that's a topic that we could spend a 2-hour show, and based on your life examples, maybe we should schedule that for sometime during these summer months, is to talk about quarterbacking and where the NFL is losing the battle of developing quality quarterbacks. Maybe we can get Mel Kiper on, because he's certainly got an opinion on that.
To give you an example, I won't say who it was, but a guy who does a podcast with a group of guys, media entity, he's like just tearing Caleb apart after that one open practice. Well, I expected this, and this. That was the second freaking practice when it was offense against defensive team. Everything else has been individual.
Yeah.
And this guy wanted him to look like an all-pro 3 weeks into the offseason.
I saw that clip this morning. I won't mention the reporter's name, but
he's not a reporter.
Yeah. He works over at CHGO. Is that the same guy you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
But they aren't reported. Hogue is, but
Hogue definitely is. And I was shocked that he would say that. You just don't name a head coach, and all of a sudden people magically start to play better. It's a process.
It's like when I was young, my dad used to bitch at me because I had good or shitty marks in school and stuff. I don't know, I'm in a classroom every day. It goes, well, how do you think it's going to get in your brain? Osmosis?
Exactly. Osmosis doesn't work in developing quarterbacks. It doesn't.
No, I mean, come
on. All right.
Take the entire offseason and preseason to get this thing gelling. And it may not be gelling at the opening week.
Yep. All right. There's a number of people in the chat who are saying, come on, let's get off this. This is old news and so forth. So I will ask them and everyone else.
I'm glad they said that, because I think that is the feeling of a majority of the fans, and it's the media that's going to keep this alive, especially if he doesn't talk this week.
Yeah, right. I will ask everyone, tell us what to talk about. Throw some questions, and Greg will talk about it. The next topic I want to get to, and I'm sure a lot of people will have comments on this in the chat room. You can catch us live here every Monday at 11 a.m. Central. It's Greg and me talking football. Greg, my question for you is, it appears that Ben Johnson is not going to be a Matt Eberflus and let players run all over him. In your experience, you've worked alongside coaches like Bill Parcells, who is probably one of the toughest sons of guns who have ever been a head coach, to guys who are a little bit more complacent, perhaps like Dick Duran, head coach of Chicago Bears for a year, your first year here in Chicago, who weren't as tough. What's the difference in terms of down to the player? Do players like one better than the other? Talk to us about that.
Well, you hear this phrase, is he a player's coach? And Lovey was a player's coach. I personally think, Parcells, as tough as he was, I think he was a player's coach. If you want to determine that. Now, I've said this a number of times. When I worked with Parcells, the one thing I learned, up until that point, I'd always heard you got to treat every player the same. And then watching Parcells, I found out, and also talking to him, listening to him in meetings, that no, you don't treat every player alike. You find out the personality of each player. You find out the button that needs to be pushed to get him to play to his optimum level, and that's the way you treat him. Some guys you leave alone. Some guys you got to love. Some guys you got to rip them a new a-hole every day. It's because that's how they respond the best. And I think good coaches figure that out. If you want to see a tough guy to play for, and I never worked with him when he was a head coach. I worked with him when he was assistant, but he treated his room that way, was Tom Coughlin. Coughlin was on Parcells' staff for 4 years. He was the wide receiver coach. And then he left to become the head coach at Boston College. He was tough in that room. And, that was where you heard you were late. If you were if you were less than 5 minutes early, you were late. Mm-hmm. So, and demanded attention in the receiver room, always paid attention to detail during drills, during practice, during film study, everything. So I think it's, say, Dick Duran. Dick Duran was quiet. He wasn't a screamer, but yet we had, from what I saw, worked with Dick for 3 years, a disciplined football team. At least the year we got there. And, I think he knew that new general manager, whole new regime, could be his last year. And we ended up winning the division, go 12-4. And, that team, I think, responded well to him. It wasn't the most talented team, but it was a very well coached team. But then the 2 years after that, I think it fell off. And part of it, I think we just didn't have enough talent. We didn't have a quarterback. We got Rex, that our second draft, and Shoop didn't want to play Rex early, so Rex didn't really play until about the last 3-4 games of the year. So it just, again, I think it was overall. We had some talent on defense. We didn't have enough talent on offense. And we were just starting to put it together, and we put it together when Lovey came.
Mm-hmm. It's good stuff. You, as a person who has been around the game at the NFL level for 3 decades or more, do you have a preference on how you like to see the players that you help bring to the team team on what kind of a coach should be coaching them? Do you like the Barker, or do you prefer the more quiet Bill Walsh type?
See, I don't know Bill Walsh, but I know people who've worked with Bill Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Now, Ben Johnson, he can rip you a new one, I think, if you need it. I don't know if Walsh was like that, but he was tough. To me, Johnson's a little bit like Coughlin, but not as strict as Coughlin. You know, I haven't been around him to really know for sure, but I know just after a couple months and listening, you don't mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that means just by hearing that, they respect him, and they're going to play hard for him. And that's the one thing that was wrong with this team with Flus is there was no discipline. And you know, he might have thought there was, but reality was there was no accountability. Players did whatever the hell they wanted. You know, you hear players, Pat Manley, Olin, other guys like that, they're saying, what the hell are some of these guys saying this stuff for? You know, it's like sacrilegious stuff the stuff that stays in the locker room, and they're bringing it out and talking to people. And it was just, I know it didn't sit good with me.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I have a feeling you're not going to see that this year.
Yeah, I have that same feeling. By the way, we got a new little toy here that allows us to put some of the comments up on the screen. Let's see if it works. It's not working right now. Anyway, Adam Hogue shared the story on his recent Hogue and Johns podcast that Ben Johnson yelled at Cole Kmet because he was lined up wrong, and he showed, kind of how vociferous he can be in letting a player know when they made a mistake. I think that's a great thing. And the fact that he directed it at a veteran is an even better thing, as opposed to making a show out of a rookie who is just learning stuff in the NFL. Cole Kmet should know where he's lining up. He definitely should.
Yes and no, because everything is new to him too.
True.
In this thing. Now, you want to take that a little step further,
Mm-hmm.
because that was brought up when he talked to the media that day. And he says, he kind of blew it off and then said, I talked to the players about this and I got to watch what I say too.
Yep.
So he kind of didn't like exactly the way he handled it.
Right. Yeah.
But again, that's how you get respect from your players.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I think there was a report, and I don't know how accurate it was because it wasn't from the kind of legacy media, which is the media that I trust the most, because they confirm sources second or third time. But there's some reports out there that Ben Johnson and DJ Moore had a talk, and he let DJ Moore know about leadership and about body language and about, not making the same mistakes he made last year. If that is true, I applaud that move too, because DJ Moore got paid and his personality changed. I understand the frustration of working with a rookie quarterback and a bad coaching staff. And you should perhaps express that, but not publicly on the football field, walking off the field in the middle of a play, and some of the other things that DJ did that I found abhorrent. Do you have any thoughts on if this is true, DJ Moore?
Yeah. Pros got to be pros.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got a veteran pro like him who's been a Pro Bowl player, they got to act like it. And you can't let a player of that ability, that talent level, kind of have his way. You got to cut his legs off too.
Yep.
And that way, the rest of the team says there are no favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And now Parcells is a little different than that, but you had to earn that. Like, he knew Lawrence Taylor wasn't going to practice worth a damn during the week. But he also knew that Lawrence Taylor was going to play his ass off every Sunday. So he cut him slack during the week. But there's other players that he'd be on him and on him and on him. But he knew, when he's had a player a while, he knew who he could trust. He knew who he couldn't trust. And so, again, that's I want the guy to play at the optimum level. I got to find how I get him to play at the optimum level. And if that is, being a slacker in practice, and I'm not going to jump on him, so what? He's the best player, might be the best player on defense in the league at that time.
Right.
So, but I know one thing, that come Sunday, Lawrence Taylor played now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that players support the special treatment that superstars get?
I get it goes back to the coach, and the good coach will explain that to you. Like, I'll give you an example. He told rookies when they came in, you're not allowed to get hurt. You got to make the team, and you can't make the team being hurt. You're not allowed to get hurt.
That is tough.
and so, they had to play through it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got hurt, you got on the shit list a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
So, and part of it is, I want to see how tough you are. I want to see how courageous you are. Can you work your way through it? I mean, he wasn't going to make a guy play who was going to be, could really hurt himself, hurt his career, or anything like that.
Sure.
But it was just the attitude that he tried to instill. You haven't earned anything yet, so you haven't earned the ability to get hurt yet.
Mm-hmm. I love that attitude. I mean, at all of my years of following football, you have to have a kind of alpha approach to managing these men who play this game, because they're all alpha personalities.
I remember, it was early in my career with the Giants, and Bill was standing back. I don't remember if it was a team period or a 7-on-7, but there was 2 plays in a row. They threw on this rookie corner who was like a late round. He might have even been a UDFA. 2 plays in a row, the guy made a play. And Bill went up to him, put his arm around his waist. He says, "Son, you keep doing that, and you're going to be here all year." So, that's how he reassured kids too.
Love it. All right. I asked for questions, and boy, do we have a bunch of them. So let's start tackling some of these. I'll go. We're staying on that topic with LT. Chris just asked a question. Did Parcells know about LT's drug use?
Well, after you fail a test,
then you better know. Yeah. How was that handled inside the organization?
I wasn't there all the time during the year because we were out on the road.
Right.
I mean, there was one day, and I wasn't there. I was on the road. I mean, LT came to practice late from jail because he got, busted for something the night before. And I'm sure he got fined. But,
yeah.
But, it was like a routine in the locker room. Like, okay, what's he going to do today?
Exactly. Yeah.
But you knew you could rely on him. And here's the fun thing: like, he never took part, and that's when off-season programs were new and stuff. He wasn't a lifter. He was naturally built, naturally strong. And I remember one day we had at this one day when we had training camp at Pace. No, it wasn't Pace. It was at Fairleigh Dickinson, and we had a tent at the end of one of the fields, and that's where at training camp where the weightlifting was done.
Okay.
So Sims would go in there every day after practice and lift every single day.
Wow.
Avid lifter for a quarterback. I mean, really put together. And Sims and LT were close. And I remember, so one day Sims goes in to start lifting, and he's, I think he's doing some power cleans and something else. And LT's just staring at him. And Sims goes, "What are you staring at?" And Sims goes, if you did this, you might play a little longer. And LT just like, he goes, "I don't have to do it. I'll still play longer." So, but he did end up start doing it. Later in his career, he did start lifting. But he was just, a total freak of nature.
Yeah, he was. There's no doubt about it. Only a handful of people who have played the game have that kind of freakishness. We could probably make a list of those players and not take us very long. All right, let's get on to our next question. It comes from King Booker World. He says, "Greg, I got a feeling that Gervon Dexter is going to explode this season. What say you?"
Well, I thought he took a step last year.
6 sacks.
Yep. I mean, and what he's got to do this year is continue that. 6 sacks for an inside guy is a good number. So he's got to keep that, but he's got to get better against the run.
Yeah.
More stout at the point attack in the run game. And, he's going to be playing. He might not even start. And that doesn't take away anything because it's really number of snaps you're going to play. Because, theoretically, you might have Billings at the 1 and Jarrett at the 3 are the starters, but then who you're next to, they're going to be playing an equal amount of snaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and that's important too, because you don't want, when you have that rotation going on, you don't want a weakness. And what I think he can do, and not sure if, how Dennis Allen's going to use him, we'll find that out, is he might be the third. I could see him and the rookie Shamar Turner being 3 and 4. And I can also see both of them playing both positions.
Yeah. I can too. I like that thought of that versatility. Bruce, thank you very much for the tip. Really appreciate it. And he's asking you, Greg, what do you think about Shamar Turner's get off?
Looking at tape from Texas A&M, he gets off the ball quickly.
Yeah,
that's a big part. He's very explosive with his first couple steps. He's quick with his hands. He's strong. He plays bigger and more powerful than a 290, 295 pound man. And he might be, when we get to camp, they're going to assign him a weight based on body fat and everything else. He might be 300, 302 for all we know. But he's got a lot of talent, real lot of talent, and very, very explosive. So, and you look, he played against bigger guys in the SEC, and he handled them very, very easily.
I think his get off is faster, quicker than Gervon Dexter's.
Oh, that was Dexter's weakness coming out of college.
Yeah.
Now, part of it was, he played in a 2-gap scheme, so he was a lot of times when you looked at Florida tape of the 4 linemen, sometimes, or they're playing 3, he was the last guy off the ball and he'd stand straight up. And then he was playing that 2-gap game. And he's gotten a lot better at it, coming off lower, trying to get penetration, trying to disrupt, but there's always room for improvement. Now, the good news is he knows it, and you can tell. I mean, he has become a pro starting last year in the offseason. Before he even got here last year, he was, already worked his butt off getting ready for the offseason program. And the same thing this year. it's important to him, and that's good to know.
Indeed. Daniel Hardy, Levante wants to know, it was announced that Brad Biggs phrased the question. Hardy moves along pretty quickly out there, and the coach, I think it was Ben Johnson, said, yeah, he does, and they are going to look at Hardy at the linebacker position. This is part of their plan. They want guys to play multiple positions. Kyler Gordon is now being looked at outside corner and safety, and now it looks like Hardy is going to play defensive end and some linebacker if he proves he can do that. What are your thoughts on this versatility that they're doing?
Yeah, well, you know what the old saying is, the more you can do.
Yeah.
So if he can be a backup pass rusher and a backup Sam, that helps his chances.
Mm-hmm.
You already know he's a core special teamer.
Yes,
He's
he is.
proven that. So if he can basically back up at three positions, excuse me, then that adds value to him as a player on the football team.
Indeed. This defense is going to have a whole new look and feel to it. And we were impressed with what Eberflus did with the defense, but this could be even more special coming up. My next question.
I'm anxious to see really how it goes, but what we see in the preseason isn't going to be how it goes.
Right.
So we're not going to find out until, opening night, how against Minnesota, what it's really like.
We might get a glimpse, tell me if you agree with this, in the preseason practice scrimmages that they're going to have. There's speculation that there's going to be 2 this season, Buffalo coming in for 1, and I forgot the other team.
It's whoever they play the second week. They play the first 2 games at home.
Okay.
So, and the third game is at Kansas City. What hasn't been said is it 1 day or 2 days of joint practices.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll find that out. I like joint practices because I think you get more done and you get more intensity.
Yes.
And now the hard part about it, especially for the Bears, you only can have your veterans in 2 weeks before you play the first preseason game.
Right.
So it's week 2, and you've already got another team coming in to practice while you're still trying to put together, your offense and defense. So, they're playing a veteran team in Buffalo that's been together for a long time, and that first week of practices, that's going to be tough.
That's going to be tough, indeed. And the Bears beat the Bills in preseason last year. Not that it meant anything, but those practices can be really, really good for football teams.
I know one thing. We won't see Josh Allen in that game. You'll see Josh Allen in the practices, but you won't see him in the game.
Exactly. Levante wants to know if you've done any work on UDFA safety Xavier Carlton.
That's the defensive end from Cal, right?
Oh, my bad. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
No, he doesn't do anything for me.
No, really?
No. The other defensive end from Kansas, I like better than Xavier Carlton. Xavier Carlton, right? I mean, he can't run. So he was like a 5.09 or 5.08 40 at his pro day, didn't go to the combine. And so right off the bat, he's a camp body.
Right. I'm just looking here.
We can look up his numbers if you want me to do that.
Let me look him up real quick here. And because he did go to the combine, right?
I don't think he went to the combine.
Oh, okay. So that's right. He wasn't a combine, but he put up a 5.05 40 time, and his short shuttle and a 3-cone times were also lackluster, according to Sports Illustrated, which is probably AI. So, KQ says Carlton has to be better than Dominique Robinson. I don't know about that. Dominique Robinson could, and when I say breakout, I mean, play better than he has any time in his NFL career. I got high hopes for Dominique Robinson this season, but we'll see.
I use the term a lot, but he's got a shitter get off the pot.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, this is his fourth year, and he's got to do a lot just to make the 53.
Yeah. Well, he had an excellent, very good preseason in 2024. And so hopefully,
Yeah, but then he, I think he dressed the first game and then didn't play for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Which I don't know why, but they thought
he might not been in favor with that staff.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because when who dresses is up to the head coach. That's not the GM's call. GM has control of the 53 who's on the team.
Mm-hmm.
The head coach controls who plays and when they play.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a question about that. During the week, you're game planning for your opponent. So doesn't it make sense? Because I got into an argument on social media with some guy about that. Doesn't it make sense, of course, for the coach who has devised the game plan to announce who the players are best for that game plan? It's not like he put together a game plan and then one of the guys that's better suited for certain plays is going to be on the bench. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, who they have active and not active.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's part of it's injury related,
mm-hmm.
But part of it is matchups too.
Yeah. Yeah, matchups are a vital part of making those decisions as to who suits up. All right, next question comes from Randy, and we talked a little bit about this, but he wants to know if you could rank the games 1 to 4 in our division. And so I'm not quite sure if he's asking us to rank the teams in the division or maybe he's talking about the games for all the division opponents. If that's the case, I'll have to call up the schedule. Randy, we'll get back to it if you can provide some more context there.
Part of it too, there's like at least a 20% turnover of every team every year,
mm-hmm.
and probably more than that. So a lot of the media, the pundits and stuff, they base everything on last year. But if you look around the league, Washington was a perfect example last year of you always get a worst to first.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of these preseason prognostications really don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Every team is different each year, and it's got to come together. Detroit lost over half their coaching staff.
That's going to make an impact.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, you lost one of the better offensive coordinators in the league. You lost a damn good defensive coordinator, both the head coaches. Some of those assistants went to go with those coaches, and so it's going to be telling to see how how Detroit comes out of the box. They got the same players.
Yep.
Players are pretty much the same, but how they going to respond? Because I saw the new offensive coordinator said, "Well, worked last year, so we're going to do the same, pretty much the same." Well, yeah, but he isn't the same. Not the same guy drawing up the plays, and not the same guy, drawing up certain plays for certain opponents,
mm-hmm.
and the way he calls the plays.
Yep, that's huge. That's huge. All right. Got clarification. GM, of course, meant GMs, general managers. He's asking you to rank the general managers in our division.
Right now you got to say Detroit's number 1, Gutekunst's number 2, and then Minnesota and Chicago are tied for number 3.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of listing them. I would agree with that approach. The fact that the Vikings didn't do more to get draft picks in this last draft, I think is a strike against them. I'm not expecting much from the Vikings this year, but we'll see.
I don't think, I like Brian Gutekunst. I've been on the road with him several times. I've known him a long time. I knew his dad. He doesn't do things wrong. He doesn't do the spectacular thing, but he doesn't get crazy and do something stupid either.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't in love with their draft. They had to get receivers. They got receivers. But they got, some weaknesses in other places. I think I think they gave the quarterback a lot of money, and I think the quarterback is average, but we're going to find out. I mean,
that's their draft. They're up on the screen. Donovan Jackson, the offensive guard, went to the Vikings with the 24th pick of the first round. Didn't have a second-round pick. And they got that receiver you mentioned.
Felton's a good receiver, but I'm talking Green Bay, though, that they drafted a bunch of receivers.
Yes, they did.
Because they didn't really have any.
Yep. Matthew Golden, Savion.
Belton I don't like. I think Belton is especially for the second round, a very average player.
Really? Okay.
And Savion Williams is a trait guy with a lot of potential, but he doesn't have the numbers.
You're right.
And great athlete.
It's like a Cordero Patterson. Is that a good comp? Could be.
Yeah, but Patterson had more stats, more had more to his name as far as done things in college. Maybe not. I mean, it could be. I know he's I did tape on him. He's a freak athlete. But his numbers are very, very average.
Yeah, and of course, that could be quarterback play, could be the play calling.
Well, they had that receiver, the receiver that was the MVP of the Senior Bowl on the same team.
Oh yeah, I forgot who that is.
And the kid his brother died in New Orleans.
Jack, is it Jack Beck?
Yes, I think that's the name.
All right, let's get to some of our other questions here. Daryl is asking, why did the Bears' 7th round pick go so late? Why did Monangai go so late when he led the Big Ten in rushing yards for 2 years?
He went when running backs go, and there was a lot of running backs. People thought there might have been 25, 28 running backs who are going to make teams this year. And so he goes late. So what? The more I watch, the more I like him. Some person said to me, and in fact, it was last night, I finally sat down and tried to comparison. And so he said, Frank Gore. So I look, and now you look at the size. Gore was 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an inch taller, about the same weight, same speed. This guy was 4.60. Gore was 4.58. Now, Gore, I watched tape of Gore all through college. When he was a freshman, he could fly. You weren't catching him. 2 ACLs in college.
Wow.
What I don't know was it the same one twice or did he tear both?
Okay.
But in his numbers weren't close to what Monangai's were. He never had 1,000-yard year. His best year was 900. But he wasn't, in that last year when he had the 900, he was more like Monangai, but he come off 2 ACLs. He didn't have that speed anymore. Monangai has got a lot of lower body strength. He's got great contact balance. He breaks a lot of tech. The first guy doesn't bring him down. And he finishes every single run. But the key thing is, that son of a bitch don't fumble.
I love it.
He didn't fumble his whole college career.
Yes.
I mean, that's crazy. But you look at their style and stuff, it's pretty similar. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Frank Gore. Frank is funny. Frank Gore, 2 ACLs in college. He gets to our league. He doesn't get hurt. And he plays 20 years or something. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I think he played like 17.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Litany. Happy Memorial Day, he writes. Great show and Bears playoffs 2025. Litany, thank you for the $5 donation. And Matt just said, Monangai is a man. He's got no love because of the deep class he came up in. Mark my words, we will love this kid, Burden and Ozzy too. I got to play this because every time we talk about Monangai, I'm going to isolate it, but I got to play the whole clip right now.
Is in the slot left. Special. He is special. That is some kind of Monangai.
That is some kind of Monangai. That's music to my ears.
Broken tackles in that play.
Nice.
For a little guy, that's pretty damn good.
That is pretty damn good.
I want to bring up this because the guy brought up Ozzy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was doing my show with Swifty on Friday, we brought this up. And right now, mentioned last week that Karan Amagaji is working with the ones. Ozzy's working with the number 2 left tackle right now because Braxton can't play.
Mm-hmm.
So then somebody had brought up, well, they want, I think Poles brought it up once, he'd like to have the offensive line name going into camp. Well, going into camp, Braxton won't have practiced not once.
Right.
Okay, so probably going into camp, it'll be Amagaji because they do know, hitting now. You got to do some hitting to find, to separate these guys. And we don't know if Braxton will be go. I remember they said he might not be full go when camp opens up. I think we're not going to know that until camp opens up.
Right.
That he's either going on PUP or he's going to be good to go. But looking at it from a front office perspective and strictly a front office perspective, and I'm a Braxton Jones guy.
Mm-hmm.
Really like him. He might not be here. And the reason being is you got now 3 tackles on rookie contracts between Wright, Amagaji, and Ozzy. Now, saying this, either one or both of Ozzy and Amagaji got to take the bull by the horns and prove they can play. But if that's the case, especially looking at salary cap implications, they're better off keeping those guys than because next year Braxton's coming he's out of contract. He's going to be a free agent. We already know, based on last year's free agency, when one very average left tackle and one backup left tackle both got like close to $20 million. And can the Bears, after paying the interior line, and they got to pay, and they can pay right next year, are they going to pay Braxton?
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, I don't know if I can see that one happening, especially now part of it has to do with the development of Trapillo and Amagaji. And if one of those or both of those really show that they can play, it would not surprise me to see Braxton traded.
That would be wild.
And now whether it would come at the end of training camp or keep him until the trade deadline or sometime in between, I don't know that. I'm being strictly hypothetical, but I'm trying to think like Ryan would think, being in the front office, and what I would do in the same situation, because if you let him go to free agency, you're getting nothing. And somebody will say right away, well, if he gets 20 million, you're going to get a 3rd round pick. Wrong answer, because it's not a comp pick. It does not matter on one contract. It's the total of all gains versus all losses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what Chicago does in free agency next year as far as getting players versus who they lose. And then you look at the pluses and the minuses. This year it looks like we're going to get a 7th for in next year's draft, an extra 7th and a comp pick. And that's still, you won't know that for sure until next spring, a month before the draft or so. But that's the way it looks right now, because part of the equation too is what do they do for their new team? Like if they get hurt and they don't play, then that washes out that, no matter how much money they got, that washes out that contract.
Right.
So there's still a part of the equation that has to play out. Excuse me. And then we'll find out. But I think, trading him gets you something right now versus waiting to see, well, I might get something on a comp pick.
Yeah, I agree. That would be huge news if Braxton is traded. Maddie says that paying average players isn't in our best interest. Yeah, but you need a bunch of average players. You can't have superstars at 22 starting positions. It's a tough one.
I mean, if a guy I would say, well, hell, if you can get him for 10 million or 12 million, you do a deal. Okay, but last year said no, it's 20 million because you got a backup get 20. The Chiefs gives a backup $20 million a year, and then the guy from Pittsburgh who was very average, where do you go? Tennessee, I think. He gets 20 million. Yeah, and it's like, just under, and it's like, whoa. That was an eye opener.
Now, let me ask this. Could you apply that same logic to Darnell Wright? Now, Darnell Wright is a better tackle than Braxton, but not much better. And he's a first-round draft pick. So when his contract is up, he's going to probably land that $20 million or close to it kind of money. Is this a year that Darnell has to really prove that he deserves big money?
And now, when you look at the overall play last year, he didn't play that bad. The offense as a whole,
I agree.
He had a different guy next to him every week, and a lot of that plays into it. Different coaching staff, different scheme. I think they're expecting big things, but you're right. Yeah, he's still got to produce. But this is his 3rd year. So after your 3rd year, theoretically, you can extend him next year. Next spring, sometime. You don't have to, but you can.
Right.
Or you got to declare if you're going to pick up his 5th year option by the first week in May.
And can you rescind that? Because I thought they did that with Lawrence Taylor or somebody. I forgot who.
Not Lawrence Taylor. He hasn't played.
Lawrence Taylor. Jesus.
No, yeah, you can. I think you can, and then he becomes a free agent the next year.
Leonard Floyd is what I was thinking of. Maddie, another donation. Thank you very much, Maddie. Very generous of you. Thank you. Appreciate it. By adding Roshar plus the 3 interior players, that could make Brax better by addition. Yeah, when you bring in that type of competition, of course they're going to play better.
Not discounting that at all. But at the same time, when's he going to line up and play? He's going to miss the entire offseason program.
Right.
Okay, there's like 3 more weeks left of that. Okay, now, and the first 3 or 4 days of camper are non-contact, it's like what they're doing now. So after that, if he's not ready to strap it up, he's behind. And every rep that Amagaji gets and Trapillo gets, that gives them a little bit of a head start on Braxton. Now, what if Braxton's not ready to play in that opening game against Buffalo, opening preseason game against Buffalo? Not only are these young guys going to be playing in the joint practices, but also in the game. And again, and the key is, what are they showing?
Yeah.
Are they showing that they can be players? Don't forget now, Bragg started as a rookie. So it's not, out of the realm of the idea that one of those two guys can be a starter and be a good starter.
Yep.
We just don't know which one. Ozzie hasn't played left tackle since 2022. Karan had a wasted rookie year. But he's probably learned more in this offseason program up till today than he did all last year.
Staying on the topic of that position, J2K had a question regarding Joshua Mills. He heard that he's taking some snaps at left tackle over Ozzie, and it's a small school player, says J2K. What do you think about any insight that you can share on Joshua Mills?
Mills is a guy that, if I'm not recalling, let me go into the roster here. He's played in the league.
So he's a veteran. He's not an undrafted free agent out
Right.
of the draft. Right?
Joshua Miles. He's already played. It's his 4th year.
Okay.
And I don't forget, he said there's no real depth chart, except you're going to be running ones with ones, at least who you think the ones are right now. After that, if Ozzie shows that he can't go to the left side, that helps Braxton, at least for this year.
Yeah.
If he proceed, that part of the key is you got to assume that Ozzie can play on the left side.
J2K says he was a 7th round pick from Arizona, 4th year. He's bounced around a few practice squads. And
but he's listed as a 4th year player, which means he's got 3 accrued years in the league.
Right. And Levante adds he's 6'5", 324 with 35.5-inch arm length. That's some impressive numbers there. So, all right. We'll keep an eye on Joshua Miles, it is, and get to another question here. Greg, how do you think the Bears now match up with the other teams in the NFC North? It's got to be favorable. It's a lot better than last year, I'll tell you that.
Well, you look at it from, obviously with the offensive line, the interior offensive line, that's a lot better. That helps them against the interior, especially Green Bay, which was strong on the interior. It helps them but the skilled people that the Bears now have. Granted, they still got to put this all together, and it's a work in progress. But the different personnel packages that they can put out between what they got coming back and then the new wide receiver and Colson Loveland, the new tight end, really move tight end, who can also play split out if you want to do it, use them in that way at certain situations. Johnson's got a lot of guys that he can really do some unique packaging with. And I think that will be advantageous to the Bears. But like I've said all along, we aren't going to see it in preseason.
We are not. That is,
you're could they see it in joint practices? Maybe. They don't play Buffalo during the year. Who do they play in that second preseason game? Kansas City's the third preseason game. I know that.
right. Miami.
Okay, that's another team that AFC East. They don't play them, so they can do that. Some of that stuff in those practices. That tape does not get shared. Doesn't go league wide.
Oh, okay.
So that stays with Chicago, Miami. Now, could Miami or Buffalo give it to another team? I don't know if there's rules against that. There might be. I'm not sure, but I don't think anybody would because they wouldn't want it being done to them. And at the same time, that's also tape of their own team.
Yeah.
And they don't want that out.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right, more questions here. Chris wants to know your thoughts about the NFL having franchises over there where he lives in Europe. You for that?
I think it's still. I'll probably be dead before that happens.
No, don't say that.
So I think that's still a long way off.
Uh-huh.
Now, the last thing he said is last week he said he'd like to have 16 overseas games. But I think that really means 16, that could mean South, not just Europe, but South America,
Brazil,
Mexico, Canada.
Now they're looking at Australia.
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you what, that'd be a bitch.
Ugh.
You need a 2-bye week after that.
Yes, I agree. I think, send those Australia games to make those as part of a preseason. Yeah. I don't know. I think that expansion can get out of hand. I've seen that with other leagues and other corporations. You grow too fast, or you try to grow, and it just doesn't work out.
You weaken the product.
You really do. You really do. And it's such an arduous thing for the players. It's a physically exhausting game already, and then putting them on a plane for a dozen hours or more. No.
There used to be an all-star game in Tokyo called the Japan Bowl.
Yes, that's right.
I
forgot
went 2
about
years
that.
in a row.
Is that right?
I went in 91 and 92, I think I went. It was 90 and 91 or 91, 92. And each year went from the Japan Bowl to the Senior Bowl. Now, if you want to, it would take me till like Thursday to get my body, because the game was played. This is how weird it was with the time change. So we'd get up. The game was played like at noon Tokyo time on Sunday. You'd play the game. Everybody was on the same plane. It wasn't like we were on an airline. It was like a charter plane.
Okay.
So go to the airport, get on the plane, come across, land in San Francisco. So now we played the game at noon on Sunday, Tokyo time. We'd land in San Francisco at 8 o'clock Sunday morning. As Yogi Berra said, deja vu all over again. You relive Sunday twice. And then another plane from San Francisco to Atlanta, and then Atlanta down to Mobile. And you were a freaking zombie.
That's nuts.
Monday and Tuesday was just like, whoa. I didn't even know where I am. And I did it, like I say, 2 years in a row.
That is wild. Maddie with the $20 donation. Maddie, I'm going to give you a kiss on the forehead when we meet.
You know what it was? The first year was 90 because
1990?
90 because no, I take that back. 91 because Buffalo was it was the year we ended up playing Buffalo in Tampa in Super Bowl 25. Because and that was part of the reason I was crazy, because that Buffalo game was on at about, 1 or 2 in the morning in Tokyo against the Raiders, the AFC playoff game, and I watched that. Then I slept for a few hours. Then I go to the Japan Bowl, and then get on a plane and come across, and it was just.
Oh my goodness! Do you remember the name of the stadium in Japan?
It's the same that the Tokyo Dome.
Okay, all right. By the way, Maddie says, "Wonder what the Players Association thinks of all these extra international games. It's more and more every year. It's going to be a topic."
It's easier to go to Europe than it is to go to Asia or Australia.
Yeah, but there's more revenue coming into the league. That's why the NFL is doing it. So eventually, the CBA is just going to demand more of that money.
Yeah, theoretically, but there was a thing that came out. I think it was Florio wrote about it, so you don't know how truthful it is. That when the owners met last week in Minneapolis, they were they still got like 5 years left on the contract, but they're already
that much. Okay,
starting to prepare, and part of it is. Some owners think that with revenues going up and up and up, and the salary cap keeps going up and up and up, maybe the percentage the players are getting is a little too high. Maybe there's got to be a cutback on the percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And damn well the players aren't going for that one.
That's right.
But it's what they're doing is just setting up the fight. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, you don't see the work stoppages in football anymore like you used to, because too many guys are making money and they don't want those missed checks. I only can make it for so long.
Indeed. Great question, Maddie. A couple of other thoughts on this topic. Big Mo says, what if a player is afraid to fly like John Madden was? Well, there's drugs for that. And J2K has an interesting thought. Why isn't there a Canadian NFL team?
Because the Canadians won't let it.
Oh, really? Because
they know it to destroy the Canadian Football League.
Okay.
That's a government thing in Canada.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
There was talk, going back, Buffalo was, and this is when Ralph Wilson was still alive, using it for leverage. Well, maybe we'll move to Toronto. And Buffalo was playing preseason games in Toronto. Like they'd play like one preseason game in Toronto every year. I went to one, the Buffalo, when I was working I think I was working for the Giants. No, I take that back. I was working here, and I went to a preseason game, and it was Buffalo and the Colts up in Toronto.
Okay. Jay Grizz wants to shout out all our military veterans and fallen soldiers. Hoorah. Thank you, Jay Grizz, for that. Back to our questions. How about this one? Creighton wants to know, how many defensive tackles are we going to keep and who goes? It's going to be 5 defensive tackles in my mind.
It's going to be at least 4. And if you got somebody that can play in and out, you could go 5.
Right.
It's how many defensive linemen are you going to keep on the 53? And last year, I think the number was 9.
Mm-hmm. Greg, I did a little research over the weekend when I was doing some work. And can you guess what defensive line player had the most pass rushing snaps for the Chicago Bears in 2024? It's a tough question.
I'd guess Sweat, but it's probably not him.
It is probably not him. You are correct. Anyone in the chat want to quickly type in this player's last name? I'll give you a hint. The player is no longer a member of the Chicago Bears.
Oh, then it's Walker.
There you go, DeMarcus Walker. So I ask you this question: who's going to pick up all those snaps? Is it going to be equally divided? Look at Matthew for teaching another $2. He says, the defensive tackle he's good on. It's the defensive end that worries me. I thought Matty was saying that he's drunk. He's spending money like a drunken soldier. Drunken sailor is the old expression. But yeah, DeMarcus Walker had all those snaps, and so it's probably going to be, Deo and a couple of other players. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Deo, given that he can play the inside, will be the main guy replacing all those snaps lost with DeMarcus Walker's departure.
Well, a lot of the pass rush attempts he had with the Colts were inside. He played both, but he did a lot of inside pass rushing and pass rush situations.
And Big Mo, if you missed last week's show, you will know that Greg Gabriel has said stop.
That ain't gonna. In fact, Biggsy said it the other day on the score too. Yeah. That isn't happening.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
First of all, the amount of money you got to give him, which is north of $30 million. Mm-hmm. He's going to turn 31 in December. It's just not something that, especially if it was 15, 18, 20 million, that's one story. But it's going to be over 30.
Yeah.
He's already turned down 28 on a 3-year extension.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Got to ask this question. I should have asked it at the top of the show. Brandon, great question. Do you have any stories about the late Mr. Irsay, who just passed away? I know your protege, Mr. Ballard.
I talked to Chris once, had a couple text conversations. Obviously, when within hours of it being announced, I just found out. I thought he might have died, and it said he died in his sleep. I thought it was in Indianapolis. He was out in L.A.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
So, and he didn't have a residence in L.A. So was he in a hotel? I don't know. The funeral was yesterday, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris said the first thing he said, he goes, a misunderstood guy, really likable guy, really into the game. He goes, the last of the old school owners, as far as I'm concerned. That's a quote of what he said. Mm-hmm. But then, the next day I read that the daughters may take over the team, which they are. And I said, I hope you got a good relationship with them. And he goes, yeah, I do. He goes, in fact, when he got there, one of the things Jimmy had him do was really like mentor the daughters and really spend a lot of time with them to teach them.
Oh, cool.
The game. And so he said he's got a great relationship with them. But then he said, hey, I know I got to win. He goes, if I don't win, it just makes their job easy.
Indeed. A lot easier.
But I don't have any, I've maybe met the man once. Mm-hmm. I do know that I like one of the first things that crossed my mind is he's got probably the best guitar collection in the world.
That's what Chris just put up on in chat. Yeah. Beatles, Hendrix.
He's got Beatles, Hendrix. He's got Jerry Garcia's original guitar with the Grateful Dead.
Wow.
He's got instruments that he's paid over $1 million for. And not only that, he's got like Ringo Starr's original drum set. And, and it's all, a lot of that stuff is at the Colts complex. And he's got a curator for all this stuff, but it's worth, I'd say it's got to be worth $50 million or more. And it's like, what's going to happen to that?
Yeah. I got room here in my basement for that stuff.
I'm sure that there's a lot of collectors that have already looked into saying, what's going to happen to this stuff? Because, and he paid a fortune for a lot of it. There's instruments that I've read in just, in recent years that he's paid over $1 million for stuff.
Amazing. Back to football here. J2K wants to know, where do you draw the line on expectations? 10 plus wins and playoffs? What do you? I know it's early, but they've got to get 10 wins this season, don't you think?
I'm not there yet. Part of this, I try to listen to what they say, and they're throwing a lot of stuff at the players, but they're not really solidifying anything that they're putting together yet. It's almost like experimentation. And so just from the offensive side, the playbook is still a huge work in progress. It's probably a lot easier to put together the defense. So how much of that is going to be like set in 3 weeks? I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And then, and then you're getting into, you're going to have 2 weeks of practice as you're playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could bring in the rookies, practice squad guys from last year, and injured guys who finished the year on IR. You can bring them in earlier than 2 weeks. You could have 4 or 5 days with those guys.
Yeah.
And so who knows when the official opening? When's the first preseason game?
Gosh,
you got that date there?
I don't. I should have it, but I don't. Bears first preseason. August 10th.
Okay, August 10th is a Sunday.
Yep.
So theoretically, players would report on the 26th or 27th of July.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 27th is 2 weeks before. And now you could bring in the rookies, IR guys from last year, practice squad from last year. I mean, you could bring them in the 21st, 22nd, something like that, and work with them. But it's going to be in sometime in that last week of July. It's really going to open up.
Yeah. The perhaps the right answer is, as long as Caleb shows significant improvement and we can say, yeah, we got our franchise quarterback. Because if Caleb does not have a season that shows really good improvement, then I'm going to be worried. Especially if Jaden Daniels continues to play well.
That reminds me of a comment that I thought was kind of absurd. But Ross Tucker on one of his, said, is Caleb Williams going to be the quarterback of the Bears in 3 years? He said, no.
That's ridiculous. How can he say that?
Tell me why, Ross.
Yeah, I don't think he ever answered that question.
No, because he just wants to say it.
Yeah. Yep. I think Maddie nailed it here. He's a moron. All right. I think
I was on his podcast with.
Were you? Oh, yeah. Recently, right?
No, was it in the spring or before that?
So a year ago.
Yeah, something like that. And he was a journeyman in the league, probably played with 4 or 5 different teams, offensive linemen, does the color for the Philly preseason games. And then he does mostly college work during the year as far as analytical work.
Okay. All right, last question. Greg, do you have a rookie or undrafted free agent or young player you're excited to see in this preseason that we should all be looking out for? Is there a name that immediately pops to mind?
There's that safety from Oregon. I can't think of his name. Would be the undrafted free agent.
Oh yeah, well, it's not Major Burns. It's the other.
No,
guy, right?
Major Burns. No, I don't think Major Burns is anywhere close to this guy as a player. And he's not big. He's like 5'9 3/4. And so then I looked up because Dennis Allen had Tyrann Mathieu. Tyrann Mathieu is an inch shorter than this guy.
Okay.
He was 5'8.5" or something. This guy's like 5'9 3/4. So Allen has played with a smaller safety. But this guy, he doesn't play small. He plays up in the box and he'll just knock your dick off.
Keep him away from me. I need that thing.
Actually, Johnson, that's it.
Oh, Lord. Good stuff. Greg, what are you doing? What are you going to do now that you're a bachelor for the next, until I see you next time?
I'm doing nothing, man. I'm just here. I got tape work to do. My wife's got to work today.
Oh no!
In her new digs in Detroit. She was off all weekend, but she's got to work today. I might go up there, not this week, but next weekend. We'll see. She wants me to bring the dog.
Oh, you got to bring the dog.
She doesn't miss me. She misses the dog.
You and I are the same, man. My wife is like, she says, I love you so much. I turn around thinking she's talking to me. She's got the dog with her. Like, what the hell?
I hear you.
All right, that's going to do it for our show. I think our next show live here is going to actually, there's a show tonight. Somebody big just died. Mike North will eulogize Jim Irsay, and then on Wednesday I am back with the Tooch to talk some football. We'll have some special guests.
Doing George Wendt too?
He did. George Wendt, yes. I'll put a link on it on YouTube in case you want to see that. But yeah, he did a really nice episode on George Wendt. By the way, Mike received an award, leadership award from Barrett Sports Media. We had a good time over at Pennyville Station in Park Ridge celebrating that. And so, rest in peace, George Wendt, and rest in peace, Mr. Irsay. And
last thing about Irsay, because I read this last week, and it's like one of these things nobody knows about. There was a former Colts player who had somebody in his family die. So this is just a year or so ago, and Jimmy Irsay gets a hold of the player and said, "I want to take care of the funeral." Nice. And players, no, you don't have to do that. We can do it. We got it covered. So lets a day go by, calls it back. I am taking care of the funeral. Well, as it turns out, it's like in the last year and a half, he's paid for like 300 funerals of people he doesn't even know.
Oh my goodness. What a guy. That is awesome. Yeah.
I mean, just from, the people know him, like I say, obviously eccentric, a little different, but just a huge heart, huge heart.
Yeah. Yeah, and when he first took over with the Colts, there was a lot of controversy. I know he was arrested a couple of times, whether it was, driving under the influence, I think was the charge and stuff. And so you wondered, is this guy one of those spoiled millionaire sons who inherited the team and is going to throw it away? But he's proven himself to be a good owner.
He was the GM of the team for a while.
I did not remember that.
He was the GM. He was also an assistant strength coach. Wow. He was a power lifter.
Look at that.
There was a thing I saw the other day. They showed him. It was like he had his knees all wrapped up and he was like squatting 500 and some odd pounds. I mean, he used to be a big dude.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Well, God bless the Irsay family and God bless everyone in the chat. And Matt Fochese and everyone else who donated, really appreciate those gestures as well. For Greg Gabriel, I'm Aldo Gandia. We'll see you all next week.
See you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Well, tell me, do you hate me or do you wanna date me? It's kinda